What's up, Valley Creek students, and welcome to Student Circles. We're in a collection of talks where we are taking time as a church to have conversations around movement and mission and maturity. And this week we are rounding out our conversation about mission. And mission is using all of our life to help others discover and experience the availability of the kingdom through the person and the work of Jesus. But how do we do that? Well, let's check this out together.
You see, one day Jesus came to the town of Jericho. And when he got there, word began to spread and a large crowd began to form. Jesus was in town. I mean, this is Jesus, the guy who says things nobody's ever heard before, does things nobody has ever seen before. He's healing the sick, raising the dead, casting out demons, speaking to the deep things in their soul. And so everybody comes to see Jesus. And there's this man in town that hears that Jesus is there, and his name is Zacchaeus. He's a chief tax collector. He spent his life working for the Roman government, ripping off his own Jewish people, and in the process, he has made himself wealthy. And so he is treated as the least of these, the outcasts, the outcast, the misfits. He's completely rejected and left alone by his people. They hate him, and he has spent his entire life gaining the world, but in the process, he's lost his soul. See, he has everything the world has to offer, but he's empty, and he's hollow. And he has no joy and no peace and no purpose and no hope and no love. And he hears that Jesus is in town. And he's looking for something, but he doesn't even really know what he's looking for. So he decides he's gonna go check it out. And when he gets there, there's a large crowd, and the Bible says he's short in stature, so he can't see over the crowd, but he sees a fig tree. And so he climbs up in this fig tree to see over the crowd, to see Jesus. And when Jesus comes walking by, it says, when Jesus reached the spot, exact words. When Jesus reached the spot, he stopped, and a hush fell over the crowd. And he looked right up in the tree, made eye contact with Zacchaeus. Even though they had never met before, he called him by name, Zacchaeus, come down, for I must stay at your house today. Zacchaeus scurries down the tree, comes to Jesus, welcomes into his home, throws a meal and a party for Jesus, and the crowd begins to grumble and murmur and judge and criticize Jesus as hanging out with Zacchaeus, a sinner. And while they criticize and attack him inside the house, Zacchaeus stands up and he says, look, Lord, here and now I give half of everything I have to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay him back 4 times the amount. A smile comes over Jesus' face and he says, today salvation has come to this house, for the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. And I tell you that story because that is a profound missional story of what God does in our life. See, Jesus comes to town, and Jesus is always in town. And word begins to spread, and word always begins to spread. And like Zacchaeus, we're on the other side of the town, and we often feel like we're the least of these, the outcast, the misfit. We know what it's like to be rejected and unwanted by the people in our lives. And like Zacchaeus, we've spent our life trying to gain the world, but in the process, we've lost our soul. In fact, it's like the more of the world we gain, the more of ourself we lose. And we know something's missing. We're empty, we're hollow, there's no joy, there's no hope, there's no peace, there's no purpose, but we hear about this guy named Jesus, and so we want to go check it out. And we come to a crowd just like this, and we're trying to see over because we just want to catch a glimpse of Jesus. And so we climb up a fig tree, just like Zacchaeus. And this is incredibly prophetic, that it's a fig tree. Do you know what fig leaves represent in the Bible? Fig leaves in the Bible represent self-righteousness. Self-righteousness, trying to make ourselves right before God, others, and ourselves. You go all the way back to the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve sinned and rebelled against God. Their eyes were open. They realized they were naked. They were ashamed. They were afraid. And so the first thing they did was made coverings of fig leaves for themselves. The first act of self-righteousness, trying to cover up my failures, my flaw, my fear, my shame, trying to perform, earn, achieve, become, succeed, trying to take care of my past to secure my future. And we take on this self-righteous reality, doing, striving, earning, behaving, accomplishing, and we try to climb the tree of self-righteousness to exalt ourselves, to elevate ourselves, to lift ourselves up above the people around us, to cover up the fear of not being enough, of not having enough, of not doing enough, to make ourselves right before God, before others, and ourselves. And that is an exhausting way to live. And while we're in our tree of self-righteousness, Jesus comes walking along and he gets to the spot. Those words are just filled with divine destiny. With prophetic destiny, Jesus enters your life and gets to the spot, and he looks right up and he looks you in the eyes in the midst of everybody else, and it's like everything stands still, and he calls your name and says, come down, come down. Hey, Zacchaeus, come down from the tree of self-righteousness and come to the foot of the tree of grace. And then Zacchaeus stands up and all on his own says, look, Lord, here and now I give half of everything I have to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay him back 4 times the amount. Here's the question, who told him to do that? Who told him to become missional? Who told him to get involved in other people's lives? Who told him to use his resources to accomplish God's purposes in the lives of other people? No one. Because no one has to tell you to be missional when grace comes into your home. When grace comes into your home, mission flows out of your life. The grace of God releases the mission of God out of your life. When grace flows into your life, it ignites a missional fire in your soul that will never go out. No one had to challenge, inspire, motivate, rally, put together a little program and initiative for Zacchaeus to become missional. Why? Because when grace comes into your home, mission begins to flow out of your life. That's why Jesus says today, salvation has come to this house. You know how Jesus knew it? Because he could see. He could see the missional response of Zacchaeus' life. Mission is the response to God's grace in your life, which is why Jesus ends with that famous verse in that story. For the Son of Man came to seek and save, which was lost. Seek, passionately pursue, save, set free, heal, make whole, deliver that which was lost. What does it mean to be lost? Does it mean you're a terrible person on your way to hell? No, it means you're lost. You're in the darkness. You don't know where you are, where you came from, where you're going. You don't know what is good, true, or right, or how to navigate. But you know what else it means to be lost? It means to be purposeless, to be useless, to have a meaningless life. Think of your car keys. When you lose your car keys, they're purposeless, are they not? They're in the dark. They're lost. They cannot accomplish their purpose. They have no meaning. They have no usefulness to you because they're lost. Their purpose is to start the car so you can get where you're going. But when they're lost, they're purposeless. But when you find them, the purpose is reinstated to now start your car and get where you're going. When we're found, our meaning, our purpose, and our usefulness gets restored to us. And that is to live in the glory of God, ruling and reigning with him. When grace flows in, mission flows out. When he seeks and saves us, we become restored to our purpose. And now we seek and save others who are lost. You with me on this? You see, this is so important to understand that our motivation for mission is not to keep people out of hell. Our motivation for the mission of God cannot be to keep people out of hell. That's what we think. They're lost, they're going to hell. We got to keep people from going to hell. Yes, that's true, but that can't be your motivation because consequence is never an effective motivation, is it? Fear is not a motivator ever in the kingdom of God. You will never have an effective vision in your life if your vision is what you don't want to see happen. That's not vision. Vision is not what I don't want to see happen. No, vision is what I want to see happen, what can be, what must be in the midst of what is. So our motivator isn't, I don't want to see them go to hell. No, our motivator is they're lost. I want to see them found so they can live a purposeful, meaningful, useful, glorious life the way that Jesus has created and called them to be. You say that's semantics. It's not semantics, it's heart posture. This is why the Church of America doesn't stay motivated on mission long, because we make it all about people just going to hell, as if the goal is so they don't go to hell. No, the goal is so they would be found and restored to the glory of God. And even one beyond that, I want to see people be found so that we can prepare a glorious bride for Jesus' return, a bride that is worthy of who he is and what he has done. Do you see how this stacks? It's mindset. Grace flows in, mission flows out. That's why it says grace teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and live upright or self-controlled, upright and godly lives in this present age, here and now. Jesus, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all wickedness and to purify for himself a people that are his very own, eager to do what is good. When grace flows in, you start to live a godly life in the here and now, eager to do what is good. Grace releases mission in your life. Mission is the outflow of grace. So if there's no mission, I probably just haven't invited grace to my home yet. I mean, do you remember the disciples? They're walking with Jesus. This is Matthew 16, so they've been with him a while. And Jesus looks at him, he says, hey guys, who do the people say that I am? All these crowds and all these events and all the places we go, like what's the murmurings? Who do people say that I am? They say, well, some say you're like John the Baptist, others say you're like Elijah or one of the prophets. In other words, people are saying you're a good guy, you're a prophet, you're a religious teacher. And he says, okay, but what about you? Here's what I want to know. What about you? He asked. Who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are now Peter. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Here's what I want you to see. He says, who do you say that I am? And it's the first time they declare he is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And in that moment, he says, great. Your identity is now changed because you've received grace. You're no longer Simon, son of Jonah. You are now Peter. And I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it, and I'll give you the keys of the kingdom. Can you see it? Grace flows in, and mission is the immediate thing that Jesus talks about. Grace flows in, and mission is what he talks about. They have a changed identity, and he now says, I will build my church. Notice what Jesus doesn't say when they declare him Christ. He doesn't say, that's awesome, Peter. Your sins are forgiven, and you're going to go to heaven when you die. We figured it out. Notice, he doesn't say, oh, Peter, this is so good. Now that you know this, it's just you and me on this personal journey. Just the two of us. That's it. No. He doesn't say, Peter, this is awesome. Go back to your fishing business. I'll show up once a year at Christmas time and just make sure all is well. No, he says, I will build my church. First time Jesus uses the word church. What is the church? It is the assembled missional people of God. That's what the church is. Church is not a place you go. It is a people you belong to. This is not an event you attend. This is a mission that you are on. And Jesus takes authority and possession to say, I'm going to build my missional people of God, united by the Spirit of God under the lordship of Jesus, sent to change the world. And the gates of hell won't prevail against them. Why? Because the grace of God is so flowing through them that the missional fire of God is going to flow out of them, and it will burn up anything that gets in their way. And we now have authority to have the keys of the kingdom to bind and loose and bring the realities of heaven to this world. And so what I want you to understand is however you see Jesus determines your heart towards the mission of God. If you have a high view of Jesus, you're going to be super missionally involved. If you have a low view of Jesus, mission won't be a part of your life. Like if Jesus is a good man, if he's a good teacher, if he's a religious guy, if he's one of many things, then you'll volunteer and you'll do some good deeds and you'll be a good humanitarian. But it's not until Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, everything, that mission will begin to flow out of your life. Until he changes your identity and reminds you that you're not a part of an event or a building or an organization, but a missional people. See, it's not so much that the church has a mission, but that the mission has a church. And out of all the things Jesus could have said when they declared him the Christ, it's fascinating that he brings it to mission. It's just like mission. Grace, mission. Grace, mission. Grace, mission. Why? Because the grace of God in you was the mission of God that is now changing you to live on mission with others. And you will never have the faith to steward the keys of the kingdom to bring the realities of heaven to this world until you declare him Christ, the Son of the living God.
Students, when grace comes to our hearts, mission is the natural response. So are you receiving his grace or are you striving for it? Let's turn to our circles and let's talk about that.